on the ground. I'm not coming down. I want to go higher, higher, higher than that.
Welcome back to the Business is Human podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, and we're here to bring you episodes that blend meaningful work with profitable success. Here to steward what I call the age of humanity. I believe if we transform the way we work, we can transform the way that we live. As always, my friendly request, if you like what you hear, hit subscribe so you don't miss any episode, and leave a review to tell the other humans that they might like it too. Always looking to help you and connect with others. All right, let's get into it, shall we? Our next Stand Tall in Your Story speaker is going to uncover a significant aspect of how we use our words. And I think we can all agree, all of us businessy people, that words have power, right? And influence over our lives and others. But what this next talk is going to illustrate for you is that all of our words have power. Our next speaker, Gretchen Schott, who is the Chief People Officer for Threefold, is going to share with you things that you've probably not heard of before and shape how you see even those little filler words. All right, here we go.
How are we doing? Good? Let me ask you, what's your go-to phrase when someone irritates you, frustrates you, or really ticks you off? Mine? It's okay. Did you know the word okay actually started as a deliberate newspaper prank? True story. In 1839, the Boston Morning Post first published the word okay as a deliberate misspelling of the phrase all correct. Instead of spelling all, A-L-L, they typed O-L-L. And instead of spelling correct with a C, they spelled it with a K, creating the abbreviation OK. Then, in 1840, President Martin Van Buren was up for re-election, and his campaign team, they used to call him Old Kinderhook. Why? Because he was old, and he was from a town called Kinderhook. His campaign team thought a really great winning slogan would be, vote for OK. Sadly, this did not work, as he lost the election. But the word okay entered our culture through telegraphs, messages, and even texts. How many of us have said the word okay today? Show of hands. How many of us have texted okay? Or maybe even the shorter K? Yeah? Sometimes I say okay when I'm feeling all right. Okay. Sometimes I say okay when I'm confused. Okay. Sometimes I say okay when I want to take control. Okay. Guess what I said when I learned my father committed suicide? It's okay. I was at the ER with my son. He had been complaining of chest pains, and I was worried and anxious about what had happened. And we were getting an x-ray, and we're sitting in one of those little rooms waiting for the doctor to come in. And in comes a call from my father's wife, and I immediately put it to voicemail. Now, before you judge me, let me share that she is a little bit of a volatile person sometimes, a little inconsistent in her communication, a little emotional. And when the call came in, I thought, I don't know what this is about, but I don't have time for this. So I went to voicemail. She calls again. So I text her and I say, hey, I'm at the ER with Joe. Can I call you later? She texts me, 911. So I text her, hey, I'm waiting for the doctor. Can't really talk right now. She texts, he's gone. And I thought, gone? What do you mean gone? He left you? Great, something else I have to deal with, which I do not have time for. So she calls again, and this time I pick up and I start to say, hey, I can't really talk right now. She says, he's gone. He shot himself. He's dead. And my son, sitting next to me, hears all of this. And he immediately turns to me and he says, Mom, I'm so sorry. And I look in my sweet boy's eyes and I say, it's okay. It's gonna be okay. It wasn't okay. January marked the 1-year anniversary of my father's suicide. I have been lamenting his death, grieving and suffering, wrestling with the man I knew my father to be and the way he chose to end his life. It has been a heavy sorrow. And through it all, I have been trying to do it all. Keeping the lights on at home, keeping the kids happy, sending a kid to college, moving a kid out of my house, trying to keep my husband happy, trying to keep my employer happy, trying to keep the show choir happy. Day in and day out, serving others over and over, telling myself, it's okay. And what I realized is this is not a one-time thing for me. I tell people it's okay when they disrespect me, when they hurt my feelings, when they're rude to me. In fact, when that happens, I actually spend more time worrying about how to make that person more comfortable than I do myself. It's an ingrained behavior that has not served me well, but has served others. What I want most in the world is to be seen and to be heard and to be loved. And when that's offered to me, I pull back. I step back. Like when I decided to start my business. I was so excited to do it. I had so many people telling me I should go all in. And instead of launching it, a little voice in the back of my head said, do you really think you can be a business owner? And so instead of launching, I made it a side hustle, and I diminished its value every time I talked about it. Or like when I decided to be a part of this experience, and I asked my children to be here to support me tonight, and then felt guilty for asking them to give up a night to be here with me. Or like many of you who reached out to me and said, hey, I saw that you're speaking at Rise and Thrive. And then I immediately regretted telling you that I'm speaking here at Rise and Thrive. I start to tell myself, I'm weak, I'm needy, I'm a lot. I desire the love that comes with affirmation and condemn myself for wanting it at the same time. My life's work has been about helping people grow. So why is it so hard for me to allow myself to grow? I am a faithful Catholic woman who desires to be both humble and confident, to lead with humility and grace, to serve others from a place of meekness, not weakness, power in control, strength in knowing and loving who I am. And what I've realized going through this Rise and Thrive experience is that I use the phrase, it's okay, as a coping mechanism. And that might be really obvious to all of you. But that was a revelation to me. And knowing that now, I feel powerful. Knowing that now it's okay no longer serves for people to disrespect, upset, or disappoint me any longer. I stand here on this stage with you now, fully aware of my gifts and talents and how they serve this world. Okay is not a real thing. Just like 6, 7, it's not a real thing. It's not. It's a pattern and a habit of speaking when we're unwilling or unable to be honest with ourselves. But what if? What if instead we spoke the real of what we feel? What if instead we were honest instead of just being okay? And not every situation requires us to be fully honest and fully transparent, but every single one of us deserves the right to be honest with ourselves. St. Catherine of Siena said, "Be who God meant for you to be, and you will light the world on fire." And so I ask you tonight, stand up if you have said it's okay when someone has made you uncomfortable. Stand up. Stay standing. Stand up if you have said it's okay when someone has disrespected you. Stand up if you have said it's okay to avoid an argument or conflict. Next time, instead of saying it's okay, speak the real of what you feel. Be you. Speak up. Stand tall. And let's light the world on fire.
Gretchen sure took us on a wild ride with that story, didn't she? And I'm going to break it down even further for you. The backstory or background of working with Gretchen and the neuroscience of how we use our words. We've got a lot to unpack with this story. First of all, I want to acknowledge that Gretchen is a leadership coach just like I am. And her jumping into this Rise and Thrive experience to be coached and to be a part of group coaching acknowledges that we all need that. We all need someone to hold up the mirror and help us see ourselves more clearly. And that's exactly what happened during this experience is we showed Gretchen how often that she would say, "It's okay. It's okay." And one particular time when she was telling the story about her father's passing, that's a traumatic experience. And she said to us in that moment, "It's okay." And I think I said, "Is it?" Because none of that is okay. And it was this moment for all of us to realize how often we just gloss over what's really happening because we've been taught to just keep moving, to just push on. And while we don't want to get stuck in our trauma and our grief, that's been illustrated talking about post-traumatic growth with our previous speakers, that there was some event in their lives that was traumatic, but they chose growth. And what we're saying in Gretchen's situation is choose growth, yes, but be honest about what you're feeling and be able to articulate that. Because if we don't get honest about those things, then we trap a lot of emotions and don't allow them to process. And, there's a very well-known book called The Body Keeps the Score, that if we don't process through what we're feeling, it gets stuck in our bodies and ends up creating some havoc in a physical sense. And so what Gretchen was able to share in her story and realize for herself is that it was necessary for her to process through more of the emotions and not just push on. And what I want to also highlight is the words that we use, even those filler words like okay, they put fingerprints on our nervous system as our identity. And they come from our nervous system state and our beliefs, and they start to build patterns, which is what had happened for Gretchen, is she had this pattern of pushing through. And once we surfaced that, then she was able to work to understand what were the beliefs that were driving that pattern and how could she get to a nervous system state that it would allow her to see these beliefs and patterns with safe, kind, loving eyes so that she could, in fact, shift them and change them. Because she's gone through a significant number of events, not just the ones she shared on stage, but it's been a year. And through all of that, she stayed in an activated state. And when you're in activated state in your nervous system, you have to protect yourself. And so we were able to help her use some of the nervous system regulation practices like breath work and stillness and prayer and meditation and using words more intentionally so that she could get to a place where she could look at this situation with kind and loving eyes and ask herself if this was the pattern that she wanted to continue, or did she need to shift something in order to shift the pattern. For her, it was always about taking care of everyone else, and very little time, energy, or effort was placed on asking herself is how she was and what did she need, to the point that she had created this protective covering over her emotions that even when offered what she really desired, to be loved and cared for, the protective covering prevented her from even being able to receive it. And I know that I have also gone through this transformation and this experience of being able to receive help and to receive compliments and to receive love. And many, I'd say most of my high achieving clients fall into this protective covering at some point or much of their lives. And what we do here and what I do in my coaching is hold up the mirror to help you see you. Because every behavior, every word that we reach for on autopilot is is a clue. It's a clue to our beliefs, and it's running below the level of consciousness until a coaching experience with me or something else in your life brings it to your attention. And so I'd love for you to take this opportunity because of Gretchen's courage to share this story and start to observe yourself and the words that you find yourself using, especially those that you find yourself using often. Maybe even ask a trusted colleague or friend to bring them to your attention so that you can study them and ask yourself, what's driving this? What's under the surface of this? And especially as a leader, pay attention to the words that your team uses to describe how they're doing. Because I have found coaching high achievers that they will say to their boss, it's fine. I'm okay. I'll figure it out. When in fact, they're not fine and it's not okay. And it shouldn't be up to them to figure it out. Just this morning, I received a message from one of my clients that was a bit of a 911 about something that had happened with her boss and her team. And she had responded in a respectful and I'll take care of it kind of way. And in fact, it needed elevated. It was not okay. It was actually a situation that was going to cause their business significant trouble because of something that their boss had done. And they've been accustomed to kind of cleaning up the mess on a regular basis. I called it, I said, you can no longer be the airbag for these crashes that are taking place in your organization. She has just taken the brunt of it over and over and over again because we were taught to be okay, even when things aren't okay, and fix it and figure it out. And that's not always what's needed. And so this is an opportunity for you as a leader or whoever you report to, whether it's the board of directors or a CEO or whoever, to make sure that there's honesty, transparency, not just, it's okay, I'll figure it out. Because sometimes your team says, I'm fine, and they're not fine. And you need to know why they're not fine because you're not able to fix it at a root cause if they're just bringing out the broom and the dustpan and sweeping it all up before anybody has to actually address what's causing the issues in your organization so that we can truly connect and have these transparent conversations and not just protect ourselves and think we're protecting one another. That's not solving the root cause. That's not solving the problems. So I hope you'll take the opportunity to really observe yourself and see, are there words that you're using that have become protective covering for you? And instead, look at what are the beliefs that have been formed since childhood that may be causing you to feel like you need that protective covering. Because all of this that happens in our lives is because our nervous system, at some point in our lives, our nervous system got the message that this would keep us safe. And many of those we don't need any longer. We're no longer in those situations, or we need to do whatever we need to do to create a safe condition and environment so that we don't need these protective words and covering for ourselves. And like I said, in business, this shows up constantly. And it's an opportunity, when people are unwilling to share the real story, either that they don't have the resources that they need, there's something going on in the organization with your behavior as a leader or somewhere else. If we're not able to share the truth, that's a clue to something bigger. And if we don't address those issues, it's like when your car starts rattling and making weird noises, that ain't going to go away on its own. So we need to go figure that out before that noise gets louder and we're broke down on the side of the road somewhere. And Gretchen said it very plainly in her talk. She said, saying it's okay had become a pattern, that she wasn't even acknowledging the feelings that were underneath it. She was just using it as protective covering. And it smoothed things over. And for a lot of years, it worked, sort of, in a Band-Aid, but it was causing the real feelings inside to fester into bitterness and resentment and things that will not further us in our growth journey. So what was beautiful about this was Gretchen was able to look at it with kind and loving eyes and say, you know what? This isn't serving me any longer, and I need to do something about it. And so since then, she's gotten far more courageous and realizes now that telling the truth and giving the truth is actually kind because she is a really good coach and has great business acumen and savvy and instincts, and covering things up just to go figure out how she could fix it wasn't helping anybody else grow and evolve and take care of some of the things that were necessary. Pay attention to those communication patterns that are taking place on your team. If nobody's pushing back on a plan or asking really challenging questions, that's not great. That doesn't mean your plan was so good. Nobody had any questions. Nobody had any challenges. You want to hear the challenges and the questions, especially before you hit launch, to figure out if there's something that needs to be improved. or in a performance conversation, whether it's the regular review or something that's going on that you need to address with someone. If everybody just says, okay, boss, that's a clue that the environment that you're creating isn't allowing people to feel safe enough to share the truth. Now, hear me on this. That doesn't mean you're an awful leader. Well, it might, but most likely not. It means that you just hadn't thought of it. And you can ask more creative questions than sound good. Anybody have any questions? Ask the questions that say, I know this plan isn't perfect. What are the things that we're going to need to pay attention to? What is in your gut right now that's saying, I don't know about that one? Ask those types of questions. Because even if you're a great leader, there's a belief system that, like Gretchen's was, that could be driving and running the show that you're asking, hey, do you have any questions? But their belief system says questions are bad. Questions mean that I'm not smart enough and I'm not good enough. Everybody else has this figured out and I don't. There's always some weird belief system running the show for all of us, no matter how successful we are. In fact, I would say that the more successful we are, the more those belief systems are running the show, and we've just worked really hard to cover them up. And so ask more specific questions and then give tons of time and space to unpack. Do it in a group, do it one-on-one, both, because some people have something that they want to share, but they're not going to do it in the group meeting, but they probably would if it was one-on-one. And then there are some people that won't do it one-on-one, but would do it in the group meeting. So we're humans, we're all unique down to our fingerprints on purpose for a purpose. And so you can't just do this one size fits all way of leadership. We've got to come at it all different kinds of ways to address all the different types of belief systems and nervous system states that are in and around and on our teams. And none of this makes us bad people, just makes us people. And we all have different patterns and beliefs that are running the show. And the more that we can create beautiful, safe spaces for people, then they'll start to feel safe enough to unpack some of these things with and for you. And that just makes everybody better. One of my favorite scriptures that aligns to this is, what? Neuroscience and scripture are the same. They say the same things. Science is actually when a human evolved enough to study what God created and then label it with science. And I love that the Lord has shown me these connections because now it's just wild and funny. But there's a scripture, Matthew 5:37, that says, let your yes be yes and let your no be no. And that one is this call to interrupt your patterns, tell the truth, uncover things that aren't okay instead of just saying they are okay, so that our internal experience, what we're feeling, what we're thinking, aligns with what's happening out there on our teams, in our business, in our homes. And I certainly couldn't love the way that Gretchen closed out her talk anymore when she quoted St. Catherine of Siena. Be who God meant for you to be, and you will set the world on fire. It does none of us any favors for you to not show up and share fully what you're experiencing. Because when you allow you to be the fullest expressed version of yourself, the world wins, because that's who God created you to be. And then he can use you for such amazing things. So let's just put it a little bit more of a assignment to it. For the next 48 hours, when you find yourself saying, it's okay, I'm fine, or whatever flavor you use, don't judge it. Don't be harsh on yourself. No, never in the history of the world have we shamed ourselves into rising. That's just not the way it works. So just notice it. And as you notice it, then ask yourself, what was I actually feeling in that moment? Was I fine? Was I okay? And then ask yourself, what's the nervous system state that I was in when I said that? Because sometimes we're so overly activated or perpetually activated that saying you're okay is your way of saying to your nervous system, I'm okay, because you literally can't take on one more thing. So sometimes we need nervous system regulation to create greater capacity to then address the things that aren't okay. So sometimes the I'm okay is the survival mode of I have to be okay because I got no other choice. I'm just barely making it through. So either one is a clue. One is a clue to your nervous system needs for regulation, and two, what's the belief that's really running the show? And the more you can observe yourself with kind and loving eyes in that way, the more you can uncover some of these things. And, for your team to be able to create the kind of psychological safety for them will be so healing for them and better for your team, better for the results, better for the growth. The research is really clear about psychological safety that when you create the kind of environment where honest information can be shared, it just accelerates your business results. It's not a far reach to make the connection between let's figure out that there's a problem before we hit go on this project is better than going back and trying to fix whatever happened because everybody in the meeting was afraid to say that your idea was dumb or it just had some little issues on it and they thought, oh, I'll just figure that out later. No, let's talk about it. Let's figure it out now. The belief that Gretchen, again, courageously shared on stage that I have struggled with and most all of the achievers that I've worked with is that my needs are too much. My expectations are too high. I'll be fine. I'll just figure it out. What's your flavor of that? Because when we don't ask for what we need, we're limiting not only our growth, but we're limiting the capacity to do greater things for others. So it's never selfish to ask for what you need. We're supposed to be in service to one another. That's the way we're designed. Our nervous system actually feels better when we're helping others and we know that we're helping others. So oftentimes when I challenge one of my kids or a client to go ask for the help or the resources that they need and they're struggling with the belief that they can do it, I'll always say, how do you feel when somebody asks you for help? Does it feel good because you want to go help? Yeah, it does. And so we can't stop ourselves from asking for what we need and giving somebody else the opportunity to do it with and for us. And, if you are in a work situation where you really don't feel safe asking for what you need and you are using these I'm fine, it's okay protective covering far too much because you don't feel safe, try and have the conversation because sometimes we are surprised that it's actually a safer environment than we thought. We just hadn't given it a courageous try to ask for what we need. But if you've tried and you're continually being shut down and not being treated well or served well to get the resources and the support that you need, there are other jobs. And that's the truth. And I can't tell you how many clients that I've walked through the journey of making a courageous change for them to just finally do that deep sigh of relief and say, "Oh my gosh, why did I stay there so long?" That's usually the thing they ask. Not why did I leave, but why did I stay so long? And there's no nirvana perfect place to work. Well, if there is, I haven't seen it or experienced it yet. And listen, I've been doing this kind of work for a long time and I worked with a lot of companies. You would think I would have stumbled upon one by now if they were out there. So I'm not saying that there's this perfect nirvana place to be, But if your work environment is causing you to put more protective covering over your beliefs and your patterns to survive it, that's not serving you. And ultimately, that's going to cause you some issues down the road, whether it's in relationships or physically. It's just not a sustainable way to live and work. So let's not do that. And if you want some help with that, it would be my greatest honor to walk with you as your coach to consider where you might want to make some changes. So Gretchen stood on that stage, having walked through one of the hardest years of her life, through grief, identity questioning, constantly performing through all of it. And she chose to stand on that stage and say what she was really feeling. And that is one of the most strategically courageous things that a leader can do. And so maybe your team needs you to be more courageous with your story so that they can feel safe. I know what it's done for Gretchen. I know how it's opened her up in a really beautiful way. And I hope you get the chance to meet with her or talk with her at some point so she can share that with you as well. Because when you stop saying you're okay when you're not, you do something pretty radical. You make it safe for people around you to do the same. And that's where real culture and team is built. And it frees you from the bondage that you've put yourself in by thinking you're supposed to be okay. So next time somebody asks you, how you doing? You don't have to launch into all the details and moan and groan and be a complainer. I know my high achievers, that's not their vibe. But if it's the kind of relationship that's an ongoing relationship, and you're going to need to continue to work with that person, and the real answer is it's not okay, then let's courageously reach out, have the conversation, and see if we can bust some things open because of our courage, because that's what's going to take. Because if the most common word in your vocabulary is quietly undermining your leadership or your best life, we can change that. We can change that. And I'd love, again, to work with you and help explore the science behind that automatic language and whatever performance that has created in you. So thank you for being a part of our Stand Tall in Your Story series. We have 4 more amazing talks to share with you. And I hope that you're not only listening and gleaning things for yourself, but I hope that you're sharing these with your team and your friends so they can experience it too. All right. Love you, mean it. Until next time.
Coming down. I never left it on the ground. I'm not coming
Thanks for being here. You can follow us on Instagram, Business is Human, or TikTok, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession. It's a great way to share some of the clips with your colleagues and friends. All right. Make it a great day. Love you, mean it.